Thank you so much for being with us. I don't know where you are at the moment, but we've been in Lithuania for the last 4 hours here in the cinema. It's a very moving and gripping experience. Certainly for me, I wasn't in Lithuania during this period, but I was in Latvia very often, so I watched some of the before, during, and after from nearby in Latvia. It's a very, very moving experience. I want to ask you something. The parallels with what we're witnessing in Ukraine, of course, are overwhelming, and I'm sure we'll get to that. But can I just ask you something quite different? We've been watching the film here in the cinema, in a rather wonderful cinema, completely enclosed within the film for 4 hours. That's not how most people are going to see the film, realistically. How do you feel about people seeing it in different ways, in different situations, not in such a cinema-shaped way?
What do you mean?
Well, do you worry about people not seeing it in the cinema, which is, I guess, how more people are going to see it than will see it in the cinema, given its length?
Yes, but I thinking this all films which I made was made for cinema. You know, we especially work for sound, very careful, and we clean picture and make the quality of this picture as better as possible. And the film was made for cinema. It's a CinemaScope. I mean, 239, which is work very well, comparing with other part documentary footage, which are academic format, and it worked very well in cinema. It doesn't work in the small screen. And you mean 4 hours, the length of the film? Yes.
Well, that too, of course. Yes. This is your longest
what
film.
else? What else? Yeah, but you know, some theater performance can be like 6 hours, and it's not a problem. Why film cannot be 4? But for me, it was very difficult to tell the story in shorter way. You know, and the maximum what we can do, it's using editing in such a way when you just didn't pay attention how time is going, and 4 hours looks like it too.
Well, yes, for me, I think I did feel that. Can I ask you, you mentioned it, and I wanted to ask you about sound. The sound design has been very important in all your films. Can you, for instance, in this film, there's a moment very near the beginning when somebody goes up to one of the plastic shields that the police are holding, and taps it, and you hear the tap. And the person next to me sort of jumped, because it's so unlikely to hear a very specific sound like that. And then, of course, during the rest of the film, we heard many, many voices and sounds that had been carefully composed. Can you say something about your process?
Work. So
why?
What?
Yeah, how?
How and why? Why? Because you have to hear something. So, but I have 2 parts in the film, and one part is very simple, because we have an interview with Professor Vytautas Landsbergis. He's the first Lithuanian president, as you know from film. And the second part is archive. And archive, of course, some archive like VHS tapes, they have also sound a little bit, but after that, or in some places, we just sometimes dub, and sometimes all the times we use like a lot of line of sound, a lot of levels, and recreate atmosphere, and you know, the recreate steps, or all this O-tone and everything what is necessary for each episode. So if sound a little bit disturbing, you can make it less loud. And that's all. It's very simple. Normal, I don't know what is in cinema. I always check before projection, and normally this film work very well for level 6.
Well, we could ask the projectionists about that, but no, it worked.
What happened?
Wonderfully.
It happened. Yeah.
But I see in your credits you have a lot of voice artists.
Yes.
So you're recreating dialogue, revoicing it.
Some dialogue very important, like in Parliament, we did not recreate. Of course, we just cleaned. But also, we have Protestants in a film, yes, and we have Russian soldiers or Soviet soldiers, and we have crowd and all this manifestation. Of course, this manifestation without sound, almost. And we have like 60-50 people and record them in the on the hill in the center of Vilnius in one silent day. And also, of course, we add quite a lot of things like wrote dialogue, like in the place where they built, for example, checkpoint. Lithuanians built checkpoint on the border, Polish border. Of course, the conversation between people, we add a little bit, because it must be alive,
Yeah, it is. It feels very live. Something else, of course, that many people associate with your films, and this is a bit different in some ways, is the crowd, the mass of people. I think the first film of yours that I saw, many people will have seen, was State Funeral, which is above all a film about the mass of the Russian people at Stalin's funeral.
Soviet.
Correct.
They are not all Russian.
No, correct. Soviet, absolutely. You're very interested in showing the mass of the people, and you make them feel very individual, as well as you show them as a mass. And here, of course, you counterpointed that with a focus on one man, one extraordinary man who rose to the occasion. So this is a bit different from perhaps the style of filmmaking that you've become known for.
And?
Where did the idea for this film start because you knew you could speak to Mr. Landsbergis and he would be such an interesting narrator?
Yes, of course. We many years are friends.
Yep.
And often talk about political situation and about past, present, and future, and etc. So, and once, thanks COVID, I prepare in this year, in 2020, I prepare a feature film, but because of COVID, I have like a possibility. And this idea came to me, and I proposed to make a film about him and about the Lithuanian people also, because things which he told me about this time is amazing, and it's a very, very good lesson for other countries which are still under pressure of Russian Federation, as Lithuania was in that time under Soviet Union. And this experience, political experience, I think it's very important. And this story nobody knows. I can say only in Lithuania they knew the story. Of course, it's a part of their life. But if you just move to Germany, they love Gorbachev. good
Yeah.
guy. Unite Germany,
Yeah.
but killed, 15 Lithuanian people and even more wounded, hundreds wounded in 13 January in 1991. And so this is his private guilt, I think,
Yeah.
for this all pressure, for all this lie which he distribute, and etc., etc. So not such a clean person. And also it's important how, because and that just to imagine after Lithuania rebuilt independence, they sent officially 150 or 160 letters to different president, parliaments, and official organization, world international organization like United Nations, etc., etc. Letter where they saying that they said that we recreate based on the democratic procedure, we rebuild our state. We are now independent. Tell me, how many response they receive?
Not very many.
Not very many. Zero. You can imagine what is a fear, what's such a fear that at that moment. Can you imagine that you are chief of parliament? This is the main person in the country, and this 300 member of parliament, and all people, yes, they are in situation when nobody really support them officially. They unofficially, they said, even that the best supporter was what kind of country? You can guess who was the first who shake hand and first who visit and etc. to Lithuania. Yeah, who support them and didn't pay attention to the pressure from Soviet Union. You know which country? You can guess. Huh? Not Great Britain. No,
For sure.
No, definitely. But a little bit far, not so far from Great Britain. Iceland.
Iceland.
Iceland. Yes, they said that if Russians will not buy our salmon, we will survive. No problem. The country with old democracy.
Yeah.
The oldest parliament in Iceland. Yes. So, and can you imagine this very, very strong circumstances when the Russia or Soviet Union, no, it's Russia, but before it was Soviet Union, they press them very strongly, very strongly, and a lot of agent or KGB agent everywhere in parliament, everywhere. And can you understand under this pressure what they have to do, not to start, not to just keep a situation in peaceful way, not to give them start war. Such a smart people, and this is a politician, and this is a situation when the people came to parliament. They promised as a politician, they promised liberate country from Soviet Union, and they made it. It's not often this kind of things happened in history. This is like a Guinness book.
Well, there's an element of almost a fairy tale about it too, because to have a leader who is so eloquent, so clever, such a good politician, having never wanted to be a politician, as he explains at the end, is remarkable. Can I ask one quick? I want to leave some space for people who've been watching the film to ask you questions. Something will surprise many people in the West is the criticism of Gorbachev, because it's a fairly consistent line running through the film where Landsbergis explains what he thinks Gorbachev's motives were and how he failed. And then he applauds Yeltsin as the man who kept his word. That's interesting. That's not, I think, the received history for many people in the West.
Poor West, what I can say. I think this history, in some books already was written, but will be written and explained to the West. Yeah, Gorbachev was invited to Moscow by Andropov. You know who Andropov was?
Yep.
He was a chief of KGB, I think, 14 years. 14 years, yes, and a very powerful man. And I recommended few books. Popov-Felshtinsky, the last book, which was published in 2020, I think, or 2021, about the fighting between KGB and Communist Party, and KGB won.
Yep.
So, and you can find answer to your question in this book. This book you can find in internet also.
Yep.
So,
can I ask you one last question, which is also a kind of political question, and it affects your own situation. How do you feel about I'm going to say the dangers of a sort of ethno-nationalism? Because what we see in this film is what looks like a very united country. I mean, we hear about the people who are against Landsbergis, who don't want freedom, who want to stay part, but it feels like it's a very united country, and yet many of the ex-Soviet republics are very different. How do you feel about the dangers of rising ethno-nationalism?
It's not a question which connect to Lithuania.
Right. Okay.
Not at that time, and not even now. So because nationalism appears together with idea of nation and in same time, and with the state building, starting from, I don't know, 17th, 16th, 18th century, 19th, even 19th century, yes? And this kind of supported disease,
yep.
which support to build states, appears almost everywhere.
Yep.
So I don't think that we can afraid that kind of movement now. No. I don't think so. So because it's more important things exist, and the world is organized in different way. Now it's not a border, and censorship control our world and can control our world. So I mean, on ideas level, and now all these states they are moving to how to say in direction when the borders will disappear. This idea is not so important right now.
Okay.
This is how I feel. In which direction all this situation develop. The best way to say goodbye to this kind of ideas, if you check your DNA, I did, and I can say that the graves of my ancient, yes, yes, the relatives, yes, starting from Scotland, Norway, Gotland, I mean Denmark. After that, Lithuania. This is why I made a film, because I have 20% Lithuanian blood, and quite a lot of Viking. Yes, and from other side, it's it's funny. It is Greek, Serbian, and Sarmatan, and Scythian, and of course the Central European.
Right.
So, and what kind of nation is a different question for me.
Exactly, and for most of us, I think.
For most of us, yes,
Yeah,
and this knowledge, which will distribute more and more, and when you understand that you have, okay,
Sure.
this kind of part of your body from Lithuania, this and etc. And who you are, it is a very interesting question. We are all from Africa, this is most important. Just 50 or 60,000 years ago, 70,000 years ago.
Well, we certainly have a lot to learn from Mr. Landsbergis and from your portrayal of the Lithuanian struggle for freedom. I'm going to ask, looking around the audience here, who I think you can't see, you can only see me, to see if anyone has a question they want to put to you. There is someone, yes, here we go.
I've got two questions, please. One is very simple. Why was the decision taken to, who took the decision that Professor Landsbergis spoke in Russian? And the second question is about the focus of the film is, it seems to me, is absolutely exclusively Lithuanian. You are inside a Lithuanian world. And there are sort of big events that were happening that don't feature at all, like the fall of the Berlin Wall, the execution of the Ceausescus, the August coup in Moscow is seen entirely from the perspective of Lithuania. I just wondered how you'd like to comment on that.
Did you manage to hear the question okay?
The first question, yes, about language issue, yes, because we have 3 possibilities speaks in Lithuanian, but I didn't speak in Lithuanian. Speak English, but I think that it will limit our conversation a little bit. Even my English is not okay, and speak Russian. So, and we choose between 2 colonial languages. And Vytautas Landsbergis, he speaks perfectly Russian, and this is Russian from Russian literature. So, and this why we just, but I don't have any, this kind of, I even didn't think about this issue. We start to talk and we start to talk as we just talk, as we are speaking normally when we met each other.
The second part of the question was, which maybe you didn't hear, was about the exclusive focus on Lithuania and the fact that other big events that were happening during the period covered are only mentioned off screen.
Yes. If I made already it's a second film about this destruction or the collapse of Soviet Union. First film I made about coup d'etat in August 1991 in St. Petersburg, in Leningrad, and I find the brilliant footage which was shot only in this city during coup d'etat, and this film named The Event. So, and I want to make another film in future. Probably I will make it about this how to say, Congress of Deputy, which is a very interesting topic at all. This whole Congress of this Soviet deputy. And part of these meetings during this Congress you have seen in this film. It's a very interesting topic. for me, and maybe from another angle, I will look to this event, to this time, a very interesting time in other films. So, because if I just make a bigger panno, a bigger film, it will take,
Even
many,
longer.
many,
Yes.
even longer, yes. And only our conversation with Mr. Landsbergis takes 15 hours, and we collect for this film 1,000 hours. Because in Lithuania, quite a lot of people has VHS tapes, and we collect this archive for film, especially for film.
Yes.
I'm going to see if there's any other question from the audience, because our time is limited. So I'm just looking around to see. Oh, yes. Okay. One more, yeah. Coming up.
Спасибо, Sergei, за ваш фильм. I'm going to ask in the more commonly understood imperial language. So, since you worked with many archives who belong to someone with personal archives, I was wondering, how did it feel for you and for them to work with these memories? I assume for some of them could be quite traumatic. And how did they speak about these memories, these people whose footage you used? Thank you.
Did you hear the question?
Yes, I understand that it is a question about people whose footage I used, yes?
Yeah, and their memories of stirring up their memories through accessing the footage that you were using.
It depends on the people, and some people already passed away, and some people, they are journalists. Most of them, they are journalists, and they are professional people. And of course, everybody has his own memory, and they were happy that I just touched this footage and include the film. They were very happy that even I made a film about this event, because as I remember in Lithuania, this kind of film where whole event described, depicted in such a way does not exist, not exist till this moment. And I'm also very happy that I made a film which was accepted in Lithuania,
Right.
Because maybe I'm foreigner for them, not such a, because we are all from Soviet Union, but I'm foreigner. I'm from Ukraine, and grow in Ukraine, and study in Moscow, etc., etc., live in Germany, yes. But I was very happy when I show film, and this film was in Lithuania in cinema, and quite a lot of people watched it, and it was a huge reaction.
I think we can imagine the reaction in Lithuania must have been amazing.
Yeah. Everybody cried. Me too.
Yes.
I'm crying all the time, because I have such empathy that
Yes.
to this country and to these people, and I'm such a man, very sensible, sensitive.
I'm looking around because I think we're almost at the end. If anybody else wants to ask one more question to Sergei, I'm seeing a hand or a finger. Several, sorry.
Yes, Sergei, could I thank you for an absolutely wonderful film? And may I say that I was not conscious of the passage of time. I found it absolutely gripping and absolutely compelling, the 4 hours. What I thought was fantastic was the cross-cutting between your interviewing of Mr. Landsbergis and the scenes. the actual scenes, the documentary footage. And what I thought came across very strongly was the great moral integrity, the intellectual clarity and the moral integrity of Mr. Landsbergis, as compared with those with whom he was dealing from the other country. What I have noticed in your films, Krotkaya and The Trial, is a kind of moral passion. There's a moral dimension to your work. But obviously you're very concerned with the aesthetics. I just wondered if this question would make sense to you. Do you start off with an aesthetic vision for the film, or is it the moral narrative that really drives you? Or are the two really sort of inseparable?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? The connection between moral and aesthetic?
Yeah, it really is it your moral imperative, or is it your aesthetic vision that drives the film, or is it the two together?
I think inside me it works together and appears in the film. Of course, it is sometimes aesthetic decision, it's a moral decision. I see this direction from aesthetic to moral, but not from moral to aesthetic. So, and I don't know, because I have to decompose my method and how I work, but I couldn't do it because I can't observe myself. But finally I have what I have. I think I answered to this question, because I think aesthetic first for me.
Yeah, okay, well, thank you very much.
And inside aesthetic exists moral, not in opposite way.
Given your productivity, the torrent of films that you're making, all of them very long, I can imagine you don't have time to sit down and think about it. You're just making films. And I think we can read what we read in the films. I think it's been a great experience for all of us, well, speaking for myself, and I'm sure I'm speaking for others, to actually see this film in one continuous arc. Thank you very much, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.